So, sense of self as a powerful healing tool. Um, what I'm seeing is that as we are um, living in this self-creating reality, we are bringing with us all of this psychology and all of these ideas. We're bringing them with us into the next moment and the next moment, the next moment. That's kind of how it works. We continually project and experience our own ideas of who we are, of what the world is, and what's true. So, how do we, when we recognize that emotional suppression or self-suppression is what's at the causal end of disease, this idea that the body stores trauma, the body keeps score, all of those things, like when we recognize that that's how oftentimes how disease is arising, then how does that interact? What do we do with that when we're subconsciously creating what we're experiencing day to day? And what I'm seeing to be true is that when we can connect to our sense of ourself, like what feels authentic to us, when we can connect to that, we're actually giving ourselves a way of creating something new. We are coming back to what a soul expression of us in the moment might look like. And that's it's such a complicated thing to try and explain how I see it. But if you imagine, like how I saw it for myself and my disease is, if you imagine like a salt lamp with all the different areas of it colored differently, so that it's this infinitely complex, beautiful, glowing crystal of different colors. How I imagine each of us having like a template, a sort of character that is that infinitely complex, beautiful soul expression. And when we come in with that, like that's what we're born with. That's our version of us in the world. And then when we believe things about ourselves, that this part of me is not acceptable or that part of me is not lovable, what we do is it's like we stop shining out of that small part of that like crystalline structure. And how I relate to my own disease was that I did that to the point that I really told my body that I didn't want to be me, so it started growing some other shit which I really didn't want. But what I see as possible is if we can put down or hold a little bit more lightly all these ideas that we have about how we can't be like that, or we shouldn't be like that, or that will equal rejection, then what we enable like that light within us to shine out more brightly, because we've stopped holding ourselves back in all of these little moments. And I think that's vitality. I think that's healing, that's wellness, that's like the sort of the radiance that we all have within each one of us. It requires us to be us. It's that thing that is so often talked about is authenticity. Like, oh, they were just, I don't know what it was about them, just really authentic. That to me that's like the truth of us in the world. When we can be really true to who we are and shine out of ourselves fully, that to me is where we don't have disease, because we don't need it. We're not holding ourselves back. We're not suppressing any part of ourselves. We're just shining as us fully in the moment. And so how we get from being in like suffering a disease to healing and feeling like we're on the right, we're on a vital path, we're alive in each moment. To me, how we get to that is not by like digging up or analyzing what traumas we might have decided we experienced, but rather, instead of focusing on how we're broken, which is a paradigm that is really tempting, because a lot of what, if you've got the conditioning that you're not good enough, then the I'm broken paradigm is really relatable, and it's really easy to, it looks like that's a good idea, but what that can actually do is not actually allow something else to evolve. You can actually hold back that evolution rather than leaning fully into what's available to you. And so what I'm seeing is if we're not, if we've what the ideas that we've invented about ourselves because of trauma are suppressing or causing resistance or causing illness, then the thing that's available to us that would be the perfect opposite of that would be our sense of self, would be connecting to what's true for us in the moment and leaning in that direction. Like, if we take an emotion, if we take the idea that we've decided as a child that it's not safe to be angry, so as we've grown, we've internalized that, and we just live in a world where anger means we won't survive. Like, that's how it's experienced in an adult body. When we've internalized something like that, we get a visceral terror of that coming out because it feels like it means we'll perish. Now, none of that's true, but how do we not suppress anger if that's how it feels to be angry? Well, at some point we have to have something else that we believe more strongly. And that's where I feel like if we can get in touch with our sense of who we are, like that part of you that hasn't that's unchanging, the part of you, that sense of yourself, it's not a sound or a word or a name, it's there's a feeling of you that's been there your entire life. Like that feeling of you, and you can connect to the truth and the power of that sense of yourself and start gently leaning more heavily into that than the invented idea that you're not allowed to be angry, then it creates this little space where we can glimpse or start to glimpse our true response to something. And what's beautiful about it as well is there's no requirement to express, to shout from the rooftops, anything. There's the only thing we need do to heal and move in a completely different direction is to accept it. And when we can accept the feeling that we have in response to something, it blooms, it shows us something else. It shows us some truth of something else that we hadn't seen. And then we get to gradually start to create for ourselves this new way of being, which isn't in suppression or disallowing. Rather, it's in celebration. We go from trying to survive to able to create for ourselves what we love, what brings us light, what, rather than us pulling a sock over the salt lamp of our soul, we start holding up mirrors and then we shine more brightly, and we get to see refractions and reflections of our delight in our lives rather than the opposite. So that to me is like, maybe it's an oversimplification, but it's a very felt sense for me. It's a very, because of my own experience with cancer, I can really feel the truth of how when we connect to our true selves, when we really feel deeply who we are and allow that in the world, I can feel the sense of vitality and the possibility of what that will create for us. I can feel it very clearly that that is where our vitality can shine through, and there is no need to unpack the boxes of trauma, or it's merely a case of giving ourselves permission to put them down and walk in a new direction. And that's what's available when you can connect to your sense of your authentic self and what you know is true. And amazingly, it's actually a lot louder in you than it seems. And it's a lot more possible to start following those breadcrumbs than it looks like. So, and that's really the work that I do with people. Really, all I do is give them permission to follow a deeper truth that they already know, something that already resonates within. So that's my thinking on why sense of self is the most powerful healing tool we have. And that's not to say that you can heal every disease that you might come across, but because it's not always about getting the trajectory that you want. That if you could live truly as you're giving yourself the purest joy in the time that you perhaps have left. So, and that's how I related to it. When I was told that I potentially only had 12 months left, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of having never lived as myself. And so even if I hadn't got better, I know that I still would have wanted to have as much of me in those last 12 months as I could. As much presence, as much authenticity, as much experience and expansion as was possible. And that did, I really believe that is what enabled me to heal and respond really well to drugs. But I wouldn't want to guarantee or have anyone attach an outcome to this kind of work, because the very doing of that undoes some of the potency. So it's like really allowing yourself to put down any ideas of what you think you should be or your life should look like, and really resting into radical acceptance of what is. And then allowing yourself fully in each moment and seeing what that is and how that shows up in the world and delighting in it, because that's what we've got. That's all we got. I love this topic. I love the sense of vitality that's available. I love watching how my body is so receptive to what state I'm in. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you very much for watching.